Welcome to A Date with Darkness podcast, where I will be discussing the impact of hurtful and abusive relationships and how to overcome them so that you can move through your pain and get to the kind of healthy relationships you want, need, and deserve. I'm Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based in California. While I hope that you find this podcast educational and informational, please note it should not be substituted for treatment with a licensed mental health professional. Also, due to the nature of the podcast, some of the information presented on the show can be sensitive to some of my listeners, so please note that listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Super excited to have you all here. And it's been a minute since I put out a podcast, and I definitely miss chatting with you guys. There's so much to do and so little time. That's what I'm finding. The year is already halfway gone. By the time this is released, we're pretty much almost in June. And I'm just like, where's the year gone? Do you guys feel that way? Does it just seem like the time is flying by? For me, it just goes so fast. But anyhow, I wanted to take a dive deep today into a topic that I feel is very important. One of the things that I've noticed about content creators, or one particular show title that I noticed that really stands out for me, and that I've noticed a lot with content creators, that produce content around narcissism or narcissistic abuse, is that there is often frequently a title, How to Get Revenge, or How to Get the Ultimate Revenge Against a Narcissist. And this is very concerning to me. One, because it's like, oh my goodness, everyone and their mama is like coaching and talking about narcissistic abuse now, right? So everyone thinks that they kind of have a handle on it. But two, I think with a title like that, or subject matter or subject line that says how to get revenge, that's really sort of coaxing you into trying to get revenge against a narcissist, is really highly unethical, and it lacks integrity. And I'm going to explain why, and I don't mean any shade toward content creators, but I think one of the things that I've learned about doing any type of media work, whether it's writing, whether it is doing a podcast, whether it's being on television, one of the things that I've noticed is that people take things literally and out of context. And while that's not always necessarily your fault in terms of how things can be misconstrued, I'm sorry, I have a fly in here. It's not your fault in terms of how things can be misconstrued. What I have noticed is that if you have a subject line, people can and do take things literally. And there's been a lot of discussion, especially from people who are traumatized by their relationships. Well, this person hurt me and they violated me in some way, so how can I get them back? And that's a very common thought question. It kind of leads you, there's times in your healing journey when you can kind of go down this dark path of really wanting to retaliate and, wanting to take your power back by someone who you feel has violated you, right? And again, when you have creators that talk about, hey, this is how you get the ultimate revenge, or this is how you get revenge against a narcissist, it makes me wonder if they actually have experience in working with a narcissist, a true narcissist. Because number one, in my professional opinion, and I've worked with many narcissistic, antisocial, borderline personality people, and sadistic, worst of the worst personalities over the years, for many, many years. So it's not just like, I'm not just sort of, I kind of want to paint a picture in terms of, my experience in corrections and beyond. In corrections, I've seen people who have done very heinous things to victims. And I've worked with a lot of perpetrators of violence, perpetrators of crime against other people. And I tell you, there's just some wild cases out there. And when you think about a narcissist, especially one who has a propensity for acting out, right? Which, in my opinion, all of them do. You never really know a narcissist's true character until you see them lose control. And when they feel like, or they perceive that they're losing control, you have you're now starting to deal with other factors that can enter their mind, right? Factors such as paranoia, factors such as irrational thinking, factors such as impulsivity, factors such as the rules or laws don't apply to me, and now I feel like I have to do what I want in order to maintain control in the relationship, or not worrying about getting caught, or not worrying about the consequences of their actions. That is when you see a whole different animal, which is why I always advise people to, at the bare these are some of the bare minimum reasons and why I advise people to steer clear of ever wanting to get a revenge against a narcissist. One, because you don't know who you're dealing with. And it's kind of like it's a situation where if like you poke the bear, you don't know how that bear is going to react. That bear may come out of that cage and rip your head off, like just bite your head off, and you just don't know what you're going to get. And I've worked with a lot of people that have um, perceived um, an injustice in their mind, or a thought, that someone may have been cheating on them, or someone may have done something to them, and they feel like something was owed to them, and have reacted very violently and very dangerously, seriously hurting or killing people, or ruining a person's life in some form or fashion. Just so you know, so I've seen the worst of the worst, and I've seen, mild cases. I've seen people with narcissistic traits, and I've also seen the worst of the worst. And you just never know what you're dealing with until you encounter a situation that is unique again. And I can't emphasize this enough, where you feel like that person is losing control. Um, so just as an FYI there, and that's why I think that content creators that sort of market, right, to this is how you get revenge. I think it's very irresponsible to say something like that. And so I would advise against doing that. And this is a note to you guys, because there's so much information out there on narcissism and narcissistic abuse. This is like a PSA for you guys to be very conscious of the information that you're consuming. Be very conscientious about who you are consuming, and be mindful of what people are saying when they tout themselves to be a coach, or even somewhat of an expert in that, because some of the information, because there's so much of it, all content is not created equal. All content does not possess integrity, and is not mindful and thoughtful of the audience. Some of it is just put out there to um get likes, get review, get likes, and just sort of get attention. And it's a lot of misinformation or ill information. And so that's just something for you to keep in mind. Even with, as you're going through your healing process, just think about what really speaks to you and what's going to really help you the most. And so I want to list out some reasons here why you never, ever, ever want to get revenge against a narcissist outside of what I've just listed to you. Again, revenge is the first one, and I stand by this, you don't know how people will react. And you always want to assume that people will, if you're trying to get revenge and it's a narcissistic person, you always want to assume worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, assume that, by trying to take revenge against a person that is irrational, unstable, and oftentimes in many cases has no conscience, that this person will ruin your life. They will devastate you in ways that you could never imagine, right? Which I'm sure if you've dealt with a narcissist before, that you've already gotten a taste of how they will ruin your life. But again, there's like add an extra layer to that if you were to try to take revenge or try to get them back or anything like that. Add that extra layer of like, oh my gosh, this person could definitely ratchet things up a notch. So be mindful that you never know how they will react. Always assume the worst case scenario. Number two, if you're thinking about revenge and trying to, get a person back that you felt like has done you wrong, when you're thinking that way and when you're thinking like, oh, I just want them to get back just, an ounce of what they've done to me. I think that they have what's coming to them. I want them to have some kind of karma. I want to take that, I want to take that street justice into my own hands and get them back for what they did to me. Feeling hurt is not a bad thing. Feeling angry is not a bad thing. However, when you are feeling like you want to get them back and you want to retaliate against them somehow, that keeps the focus on the narcissist, right? That line of thinking keeps you in that relationship with that narcissist. And that's still giving them attention, even if it's negative attention, you are still giving that narcissistic person your energy, and that's keeping the focus on them, which leads me to number three, that negative thinking cycle, right, is very much what they do. When you start thinking about retaliatory or revenge behaviors, that is very much in alignment with how a narcissist thinks, right? They're very manipulative. They are very calculating. And again, they feel like they always want to have the upper hand in a relationship. So getting someone back, trying to take control or lashing out, being vengeful or revengeful is very much in alignment with how a narcissist reacts. So getting stuck in that negative thinking cycle that's very akin in alignment with how the narcissist thinks, that's their behavior, that's their lack of conscience. And a narcissist's behavior, when they start thinking like that, that's very immature. It's very, again, it's very negative. It's very aggressive type of thinking style, and it's a very black and white thinking style. And so if you're thinking in that way, you are essentially stooping to that level and engaging to a certain degree emotional immaturity, right? As opposed to focusing on moving on with your life and getting away from this person as much as you can, and creating distance both energetically and physically from this toxic personality. Number four, if you engage in revenge or even thinking about revenge, the only person you're really hurting is yourself. While you may get some sort of temporary ability to gloat, like, aha, I may have gotten you, or aha, I've done something that I know that is going to piss you off, that's only temporary. The only person that you're actually hurting is yourself, because again, you're keeping yourself emotionally stunted and focused on this person and their relationship and stooping energetically to their level. And so you're only hurting yourself in that way by staying focused on that, breathing life into this person, breathing life into their negative patterns and behaviors, right? And so there's a level, again, of stuckness there that keeps you there. Number five, you want to start thinking about like, okay, how just getting revenge how does me reacting in this way, or think about how much does this help me in my healing process? How low am I willing to go? Because what if this person reacts and lashes back out at me? Am I gonna then retaliate and lash back out at them? Like, how far am I willing to take this? And what's too far? What's my ability to engage this? And are you reacting off of logic and reasoning, or are you reacting off of emotion? And if you're reacting off of emotion when you're making these kind of thinking decisions, like getting revenge, reacting off of emotion is typically not a good thing, right? So pretty poor choices and impulsive choices are often made when we react off of emotion and temper. Okay, so that's another thing, is like you don't want to hurt yourself and become very impulsive um, by reacting off of emotion that is very negative at that. So instead of thinking about revenge, I have some suggestions for you that may help you with your healing process. Um, the first thing is, what I suggested before in terms of, being committed to yourself. And part of the commitment is being committed to your healing, being committed to your recovery, to your moving forward in your life, and moving past this relationship, and, you know, guarding your emotional and mental and psychological health from here on out, right? And so being committed to yourself, and part of that commitment, as I mentioned before, could goes back to being mindful of whose content you consume, and making sure that it's ethical content there, and that it's not just someone who's like spouting out irresponsible advice here about that. And then recognizing that a lot of this information out there on narcissistic abuse, you have to take what you need and leave the rest on the floor. Because again, there's so many people out there sort of talking about it. It's not a one size fits all. And so some of the information is applicable to you, some of it is not. But I would also be very wary of someone who's again, telling you to sort of act out and do certain things, and also, not preparing you for the level of dangerousness. And a lot of people underestimate the level of dangerousness of a narcissist, because they can say, well, I was in a relationship with a narcissist, but I never saw them react violently towards me. And they think, the narcissist in my life never put their hands on me, or we've never had a violent incident. That does not matter. Because there may have been certain circumstances or situations that weren't introduced, to where you could see the levels of destructive behavior that that person can go through. So just because you've never seen someone react a certain way does not mean that they are not capable of doing that. And I see people underestimate that all too often. Okay. And so, again, being committed to yourself, I can't emphasize that enough. Making sure that you're not staying stuck in your thinking. And number three is doing the work. So, recovery from narcissistic abuse is, you have to do the therapeutic work. There is no workaround around that. There's people, even if you're consuming content like mine, somebody else's, or, whatever the case may be that you're consuming all this platform on any platform, it does not negate the fact that you have to do your own individualized work that is tailored to you, right? And so, I hear people all the time saying that they're getting therapy from Instagram or from, whatever. That's not therapy. That's not That's not something that's going to tide you over. And, again, even if you hear something or see something that resonates with you, you have to make sure that you're using it in its proper context. But again, doing the work with a licensed professional who is familiar with patterns of abuse. Coaching can be used as a supplement, but again, you need someone that is trained, and that can help you and that is licensed to help you in PTSD, who is trained in safety planning, reality testing, when it comes to domestic violence or narcissistic abuse. I cannot emphasize that enough. So you have to do your work, be committed to that, right? Because that is a commitment to yourself. Um, uh, or you want to focus on moving on. And moving on, again, it's still it's still a big part of doing the work, right? And detaching from that person, detaching from that situation, detaching from that negative energy. But you have to focus on moving on because you want to raise your vibration. You want to start thinking in ways that aren't you want to start moving and thinking in ways that are not in alignment with being abused, that are not in alignment with being taken advantage of, that are not in alignment with having your boundaries violated. So the more work you do on those areas, and you can focus on moving on, and you can start to attract good quality people and relationships in your life. And I think that should be a big focus, whether those relationships are romantic, whether they're friendships, whether they're familial, whether they're work relationships. You want to start to attract things that are worthy of you, right? And you want to attract different types of relationships. And unfortunately, when you're thinking about tit for tat or getting someone back, again, that keeps you stuck, and that keeps you, in a state of where you do attract you attract based on the energy that you put out there. So, something for you to be mindful of. Yeah. So, making sure to take care of yourselves. And I hope that this has been useful, but I can't stress enough that, I want you to keep your safety, your integrity, and your emotional, mental, psychological, financial, sexual, and physical health in mind first and foremost. And I hope was helpful to you guys. So until next time, you guys take care of yourselves and be well.